Hi and welcome to this video. In this video I'm going to do a flip through of this sketchbook that is now completed, and I started it in October of 2018 and didn't actually complete it until the very end of 2020. Alright, so I'm just going to talk through the pages as I show you them, but if you just want to look at a visual flip through, I will leave a quick time lapse page by page at the end of this video, so you can just skip ahead if you'd rather watch that. But this sketchbook I started in October of 2018, and the reason I started it was because I was doing the 100-day project and I ran out of pages in the previous sketchbook, and I had been doing, I think, 10 days. It was like 10-day increments of different subjects, and I was doing animals, and I had run out of pages and started this new sketchbook. So here's day 69 of 100. And then I did day 70 of 100, and I think I then decided to switch to another sketchbook because this sketchbook is actually not made for watercolors. It's a Stillman and Birn, I think it's the Beta series, and it's sort of a mixed media sketchbook. And then it doesn't really take watercolors as well as I would like it. So after day 70, I switched to another sketchbook, and I didn't actually finish this 100-day project. I think I got to day 94, which is kind of sad, but that is the story of the first two pages. And then I decided, when this sketchbook is out of order, is that I decided to come back and start doing sort of journal sketching back in October of 2020. But this book actually started here. So if you just ignore these two pages, I took this sketchbook after the 100-day project and I started doing a sketch journal after reading Samantha Dion Baker's Draw Your Day, and it was gifted to me by a friend, the book, and then I started trying to do the sketch journaling for the first time, and I used this sketchbook because it's really great for, ink and then washes, and that's where this started. And for some reason, I decided to do this journaling on only one side of the sketchbook page. So basically I would flip it and then I would do a spread here, and then I'd flip it and then do a spread here, and I would skip the back sides. I don't know why I did that, but that's what I did. And so if I look at the sketchbook, it actually goes like this. So you would just look at this and say, okay, this is April 24th, and then this is April 25th, and of course April 26th. And around this time was when I had a newborn, and my now toddler, he was very young, and I was documenting some of the things that were going on at that time, and I basically just went page by page, and you can see I started to not go daily. It went from April 26th through to May 1st, and then May 1st became May 7th, and sometimes I would be on track, May 8th, May 12th. But as I did this, the more I realized, I would go back and try to do a little bit more watercolor feel, and it wasn't working the way I wanted it to. And so I went back to doing more line work plus washes, and that seemed to work better for this book. And I think because I couldn't get myself to stick with just doing line and wash, it became a little bit uninspiring for me, I would say. So in some ways I just stopped doing it. So after this one, I think I stopped, and the rest of the book was left empty for a long time until I decided, and I'll flip back now, I decided in 2020 that I would go back to doing these kind of daily sketches. And I started off thinking I would do it as a sketch journal. And so this is very documentary, but it became something else, as you'll see as I flip through. So I basically went in and filled in all of the empty pages is what I did. And so that's why it's out of order. So here's the first day I decided to start. Actually made a mistake, and I think these sketchbooks are teaching me that it's okay, that it looks messy or isn't right, and then I just allowed myself to really just explore, and I started to do a little bit of ballpoint pen, and then doing a watercolor wash and using ballpoint versus ink to write notes just to see what it would look like. And I think at this point in my own creative journey, you know, if you look at it, it's about 2 years after I first started the sketchbook back here with the bunny. I think I was really allowing myself to explore a lot more. And so here is where I start doing that. And you can see I even skipped a month. So I started on October 24th, and then I didn't do anything. Maybe because this still felt a little bit foreign for me. Like I don't think I ever settled into like a daily documentary journal type feel, at least at this point in my own creative journey. And so I think it just didn't feel fun for me. It felt like I was doing it to try it. And then back in November, a month later, I decided to try this again and do it a little bit differently, just to let go and see what happened. And this felt fun for some reason. It felt like, oh, I'm exploring, and let's see what this book can do, and let's see what I can do with this paper that I don't really love for watercoloring. So now we're doing the back sides, and now it becomes daily. So on the 24th of November, I decided this is going to be a daily exercise, because the exact number of blank pages was, at that point I thought it was the exact number of pages matched up to the exact number of days left in the year. And it turns out I was 1 page short. So basically there were 36 blank pages and 37 days left. Oh no, there were 35 blank pages and 36 days left in the year, I think was what it was. I can't remember exactly. But basically I was 1 page short, so I actually skipped 1 day. But I was really proud of myself for finishing. And so here are basically the daily entries that happened after the 24th. So here we have the 25th. And it was, part documentary because I would write in it. This was my brother's birthday. And here are just supplies I used. There are some days where I really didn't feel that creative, but I wanted to put something down on paper. So I would just do something quick or draw exactly what was in front of me and not really care too much about the results. And we put up our Christmas tree, and you can see a lot of the colors rubbing off from the other page, which, to me is okay. I didn't really mind. I'm still experimenting here between pencil versus pen. I started playing around with the frame, as you started to see. I think that it helps contain my sketch, which I like in some ways, so I was playing around with that. And just kind of drawing and painting what was on my mind, and that was very freeing. A lot of these have to do with daily events, things that I do with my toddler, things that he likes. I thought it was a nice way to sort of document certain things. It's a podcast episode I listened to. We're now in December. More just daily sketches. Sometimes they were very loose and I wouldn't spend very much time. And other days I would spend much more time. This day in particular was one of those things that, those sketches, that I wasn't into. I just didn't want to sketch that day. I wanted to go watch Netflix. And, sometimes that happens. And at this point is when, if you remember, this was the last page of my previous sketch journal. And at this point, we are going into the double page spreads, because now it becomes the blank sketchbook. So then I would just treat it like a regular sketchbook. All right, so I adjusted the camera so that you can see both pages at once. So these really just are random little sketches and it's just whatever inspired me that day. Sometimes I would write something, sometimes I wouldn't have anything to say and I would just sketch. And I think that was okay. Some of them definitely turned out nicer than others in my mind, you know? And I think it was just being okay with that was a really big lesson. This page actually was fun because I decided I wanted to play with gouache because like I said before, the paper in here it's not the best for watercolor in, you know, the traditional watercolor sense, using watercolors in the way that you would use on a watercolor paper, but it's really nice for things like gouache. So I started playing with gouache just for fun. I go back to watercolor. This is, you know, a period of time where I was trying to decide on new colors for my palette, just kind of investigating, and this was a fun little exercise to do. This is my son's birthday, just documenting that and doing some fun things here. This flower was interesting to me because I used watercolor, but I think here I'm really starting to understand how to work with the paper instead of fighting against it. And so using watercolor on here in the way that it works the best, I guess is the best way to describe it. More color investigations. You can see these are just things that were going on at that time that I was doing, and I just happened to do it in the sketchbook. Then I had sent out a bunch of Christmas cards, and I actually put one of the stamps in here. It's just kind of a nice way for me to remember things that are going on. Figuring out the palette, and then playing with gouache still. I had a lot of fun with gouache during these few days here. It's just such a different medium, and the way that you use it is different, and I have fun, and I really like to layer it on really thick. Gouache can be watered down and could even act just like watercolors, but I like to use it like very thick. This was the Great Countdown, the Great Conjunction, when Saturn and Jupiter are right next to each other, and I thought that was a really nice way to document it. There are some days where this is a gouache day where I wasn't really feeling it. This is a watercolor day where I wasn't really feeling it. You can kind of tell. You can tell in the expression that came out, and I feel like I kind of love that. I love that. I can look back and really remember how I felt those days. I started to do watercolor on watercolor paper because I just was really feeling inspired to do watercolors instead of doing a sketch. And sometimes I don't have time to do both watercolors and a sketch journal page just because my time is limited with being a stay-at-home mom full-time. And so I work at night and during naps. And so I gave myself a rule that I would do something at least every day. And if it happened to be on watercolor paper, I let myself just tape this into the sketch journal and count that as my page. And I think that's part of the flexibility that we're allowed to give ourselves in our own creative practices. This was done from a class. This was actually a collage, which was I cut this part out of an envelope because it was a beautifully decorated envelope from a friend, Jane, and then I wanted to preserve it, so I painted like sort of like a mirror of it, not a mirror, but I just continued it just for fun. I just wanted to see, you know, what it would look like in gouache. I ended up skipping a day here. You can see it goes from 26 to 28, so that's the day I skipped, the 27th. I went to the dentist and I had to get a crown, and so I documented that. This is another one of those days where it was just a fast sketch and I just left it like that. We did pizzas in the backyard with a grill. I'm experimenting with flowers here still. Flowers aren't something that I tend to paint a lot, and during this time I definitely, you know, in this sketchbook I started exploring flowers. And this was the last day of the year, and I ended with flowers. And I don't know what I did here. This is also experimentation, as you can see. I definitely I just put gouache down, and then I wrote over it with pencil. But it's okay, and it's messy, and I loved it. I loved experimenting with this sketchbook and doing these daily sketches. I thought it was a really nice practice to have for the time that I did it, and I definitely want to try and revisit doing something like this again in the future. But I'm very glad I finished the sketchbook. I will do a quick flip through here so you can see the whole thing. And thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed kind of taking a look in my messy sketchbook.